ECSI fans, you want to revolutionize your sports investing habits? Allow me to tell you about WagerWire. WagerWire is an app that helps you become a superior bettor by allowing you to sync all your sports books and track all your bets in one place. See your current action, your betting history, and stats. You could also sign up for sports books and collect bonus offers. Follow them at WagerWire on X, as it's the best account on the platform. Head to App Store or Play Store now and search WagerWire and download the app. Good afternoon, sports fans from all around the globe. I am the host, Jeff Dawson, East Coast Sports Investors, and this is the Midday Market Report for Thursday, February 16th, 2024. It's the Preakness. It's round 2 of the Triple Crown. Will Mystic Dan make it 2 in a row? No MUTH. No problem. Blessed and honored to have horse racing expert, Mr. Sean Alvarez from Wager Talk at Smooth Turn 2 with us again, and he'll be with us 3 weeks from now as we talk the Belmont, and I hope he's around this summer talking some Saratoga and some other big races. So super stoked. Shout out to our producer, the real star of this show, Mr. Noah Frank. Thank you so much, Noah. And of course, a shout out to our proud sponsor and partnership, WagerWire. If you haven't downloaded the app, please run over to Google Play, download it. It's free. Myself, Travis, Zach, the rest of this WagerWire community that's building day by day will take over from there. So without further ado, let's bring in the true star of this show, the one and only, Mr. Sean Alvarez. What's up, brother?
Jeff, I don't mean to be a broken record, but it's always fun when, we get the jewels of the Triple Crown to at least sit down and chat a little bit of horse racing. I will say your advertisement up front when you said WagerWire on X, it still throws me off calling it X. In my head, I still call it Twitter. But, I'm getting at my old age, I'm set in my ways.
Well, we were here 2 weeks ago, and it's kind of funny because in January and February, Jeff Benson, who right here at the Circa, Derek Stevens, the Mecca, the best in the business, put up future odds for the Kentucky Derby. I sent it out to all my colleagues and friends, and my eyes were fixated on Sierra Leone. I don't know why. I'm not the expert. You're the expert. I was just fixated there. You and I and the rest of the world talked on that Thursday, and 2 weeks ago, I jumped on Forever Young. I was reading some stuff. I was just looking, took the plays that you gave us. Got to Derby Day, got to the race, and it took forever. Jesus, I thought it was at 6:20. 7 o'clock. How much can you talk about? After the last race before the Derby, it was an hour and a half before they started that race. So what I want you to do is I want you to take us back 2 Saturdays ago to the lead up of the race and walk us through the race, and I'll have Noah put up the results of the race. And I'll just say this outside from not just a fan. I had some ducats on the race. Truth be known, I had Forever Young first, second, and third. I had win place. I had exactas. I had trifectas. I will be the first to say if it was a dog race, I would have had the alls, and I would have hit the race. I had no Mystic Dan. I thought Forever Young got an awful trip. I thought Sierra Leone just leaned the crap out of him down the stretch. I really think if he didn't, he would have won that race. But take us to that Saturday. Take us through the race, what your eyes saw.
Yeah, so I mean, like you alluded to with us talking about the race 2 weeks ago. Let's just start with the favorite, Fierceness, that absolutely threw in the towel. Now, this is a very, very talented colt, and I would say warranted that short price in this field, but we talked about it. And when he put forth his best effort, he had the races entirely his own way. He went out to the early lead in the Florida Derby. He walked on the front and just kicked away from a field that, wasn't necessarily a very talented field. And then his best race before that was the Breeders' Cup Juvenile back in November last year, when MUTH was kind of tracking him and another long shot leader. But in that race, I believe Fierceness was 15 or 16-1. The jock on MUTH wasn't necessarily worried about Fierceness. And unfortunately, that was, his downfall to MUTH losing that race was Fierceness just kicked on because he had it his own way. Now, there was definitely quick fractions up top. Fierceness didn't necessarily get a clean break out of there, going a little too quick, too wide, and never got that breather and spit the bit out. And we went over that. That was definitely a possibility on what was going to happen. Now, I will say I was right and I was wrong about Sierra Leone. It was kind of a toss for me. I didn't think that he had the closing kick necessarily to get there and to get through the traffic that he went through. But we talked about the way that Sierra Leone runs in the stretch. He has a real trouble switching leads. And while he's trying to switch leads, he's ducking in towards the rail. Now, we rewind back 2 weeks ago in the Kentucky Derby, what was he doing? Trying to switch leads, and he was ducking in on the rail and just basically hand fighting Forever Young the entire way through the stretch. I am a believer like you. I think that Forever Young or even Sierra Leone win that race if they're not hand fighting all the way down the stretch. Kind of going back to the trip that Forever Young had, everybody saw what he had to deal with in the stretch, and whether or not he was leaning in or Sierra Leone was leaning in, that's totally up to your opinion. But if you go back to the start of the race, he jumped in the air at the start. This is a horse that doesn't necessarily break poorly, and he creates his own trip. Now, when you jump in the air at the start, he got pinballed by the horse on the inside, the horse on the outside, and got kind of squeezed back. So I think that he was a little bit further back than he wanted to. And then what he had to deal with in the stretch. Now let's go to the winner of the race, Mystic Dan, which, like you said, even if Forever Young wins that race, I didn't have Sierra Leone and Mystic Dan in the exacta. So while I would have won my outright win bet, I still would have missed the exacta and the try. But if you look at what Mystic Dan did, is a lot of people thought, or saying on Twitter or X, sorry, again, my old age. A lot of people are saying on X that he was in touch in the lead with the lead. He was up and near that quick pace, and I just don't see that watching the replay. He was far enough back so that he wasn't running those fractions, and he saved all the ground. Yeah, we go back on it. It was a 20 horse field. He's got 19 competitors, and it really comes down to what kind of trip are you going to get in a field where you have 19 other rivals going against you. He saved all the ground the entire time. And, I wouldn't say the seas parted, but, going up and turning from home, there was a good, I would say, one wide, two wide path that he could kind of squeeze into. And he got first run on Sierra Leone. He got first run on Forever Young, and he got first run on Catching Freedom, who eventually followed him on that trip. And like I said, Sierra Leone and Forever Young were hand fighting the entire way, but they were still making up ground on Mystic Dan. So he definitely won the race by Brian Hernandez being patient, waiting for that hole to open, not forcing the issue. And then, luckily for him, the hole did open and he was able to get through. And another horse that was in that race that is actually running on Saturday, the 3 Catching Freedom in the Preakness field, he was the same way. He was probably 2 to 3 lengths behind Mystic Dan. You could see Flavian trying to look to see if he can get out. And once he saw Mystic Dan go through that hole, he went through that exact same hole. He was bumped a little bit, but he was still making up ground on Mystic Dan as well. So there's definite things to take out of that race, especially with the horses that are running back in the Preakness this Saturday. So definitely a lot to take from it, and we'll see how it plays out on Saturday.
I couldn't have said that better because there's no way in hell I could have just said what you said. Spot on. And again, our eyes want to see what we want to see. I saw the stumbled break, the pop up. And of course, my eyes are fixated the whole race on Forever Young there. And I talked to you about the one dormant. Yeah, dormant. And I says, Jesus, where's Calvin Burrell when you need him? Well, Mystic Dan ran a Calvin Burrell race, it looked like, again. And now, you know, Sierra Leone sitting this one out, getting refreshed, ready for the Belmont, of course. Forever Young gets shipped right back to Japan. My assumption, I assume, Sean, he'll be ready for the Belmont.
No, it sounds like they might run kind of a prep race before, and then are eyeballing the Breeders' Cup. Yeah, you know, we kind of talked about it in the Belmont. That's usually an angle I don't like to use. Horses coming from Dubai or even Saudi Arabia or even Japan, and this horse did all three. And you and I know, you know, when you make a long trip, and we're usually just making long trips across the country, jet lag is really a thing, you know. And this horse has put forth four just incredible efforts while dealing with that jet lag. I think the trainers and the owners are doing right by the horse and just kind of giving them that rest.
And I was looking at his air miles, and it was kind of comical. And the 5 for 5, 5 different tracks, and I'm like, Jesus, this is a star of all stars here, and to get beat like that. So again, I like that angle. And again, I don't have Biff's almanac, I don't have a crystal ball, but my assumption, Sean, without knowing what happens the next two races, never mind during the summer, he's got to be the favorite or one of the favorites, right, for the Breeders' Cup Classic?
Well, you know, you got to keep in mind that the Breeders' Cup Classic is for 3-year-olds and over. The Triple Crown is for 3-year-olds only. So technically, he could run into, you know, older horses that are a little bit more proven and whatnot. But I mean, you're right. I definitely think that, especially if the training and the prep race going into the Breeders' Cup, as long as that goes well, I think, you know, if he's not the favorite, he's definitely going to be somewhat of a shorter price.
All right, let's bring up the board for the Preakness run on Saturday at Pimlico. The talk was not just Mystic Dan, the Kentucky Derby winner. The comical part about it, again, was the 4 MUTH, who is scratched, who was the favorite to start. So give us your insight on MUTH. Spiked a 103 fever. They decided it would be best that he didn't race. Thank you so much for doing that, guys. Thoughts with MUTH? Did he deserve the favorite? Was he going to be the horse to beat here come on Saturday?
Oh, yeah. I mean, he was easily the horse to beat. You know, I'm not necessarily a big Beyer speed figure guy. That does give me, you know, at least a starting point on how horses are run. But, you know, I'm more of a visual looking at, you know, the timing of the race, looking at who they beat. You know, obviously, MUTH didn't have the best prior Beyer speed figure. Mystic Dan actually would be the best Beyer speed figure, but this was the horse to beat. It was 8-5 on the morning line. If I'm being honest, I think we were probably going to get even money to 4-5. This horse was going to be heavily bet. Kind of going to get it. I wouldn't say a similar trip to Mystic Dan, but you know, based on the way that MUTH is run and the way that Mystic Dan was run, it was difficult to see how Mystic Dan can go and run him down if MUTH didn't kind of spit the bit out and come backwards. Now, you know, like you said, you know, they shipped him to Pimlico and he sprung a fever. I believe it was 102. I wouldn't say that's normal, but when they do ship, they usually do have a little bit of a higher fever. But, you know, I mean, we talk about it all the time. The horses are the number one priority. Not only just, you know, we have to take care of the horses because they're the athletes, they're the ones performing on the track. But on the flip side of that, back, you know, last year in March at the OBS sale, the Zidane Racing Crew paid $2 million for this horse. They're going to treat him with, you know, white gloves and bubble wrap. You know, his career earnings are around 1.5 million. If I'm doing quick math, I think they're probably still around 700,000 in the hole. You know, you don't want to send MUTH out there when he's not, you know, not at his peak performance, and you definitely don't want the horse to get hurt. So Bob and the Zidane Racing Group definitely did right by the horse, and you know, would he be my top pick? Probably in this race, but you know me, I always try to beat the favorites. So you hate you hate seeing that the 8-5 morning line favorite getting scratched, because you know that your horses that you like are going to get a little bit, played a little bit more, and you're going to swallow a shorter price. But, that definitely gives us a better chance because, like you said, or like you asked, MUTH was definitely the horse to beat in this race.
Kentucky Derby, 3-year-olds, 160,000 screaming fans, drunk by 7 p.m. Eastern. We know that most of them are. Usually when you catch your big prices, 2 years ago, again, 50 cents on a trifecta brought you back over $7,000. People that play the Kentucky Derby, just the average horse better, then see the prices and they come back to the Preakness and they get crazy. You're not going to see big ticket prices at the Preakness most likely now, an 8-horse field, unless obviously the 1, 2, or 6 win the race. So I'm going to have you break down this race. Obviously it will be a lot shorter and easier for you with only 8 horses versus the 20 horses. Just thoughts on each of them. If you don't have anything on any of them, we can just pass on them.
Yeah, I mean, we'll start with the number one, Mugatu. I mean, this horse in his last start back in the Bluegrass at Keeneland, this horse was 181-1, and he ran like it. It was never involved in the pace and never had any kind of closing kick. Finished 5th, beating 7 lengths. Honestly, I think he deserves to be 181-1 in this race. So I spent a good amount of time on the Wager Talk show last night talking bad about this horse. So he's probably going to rich strike me and win at 99-1. But I don't have much of anything about this horse. Like I said, he doesn't have any kind of early speed, so he's not going to be affecting the pace. And there's just so much classier closing horses that I just don't see how he can turn the tables on that on this race. The 2 Uncle Heavy is actually an interesting horse for me. ED, that's Ed DeRosa's fair odds, I believe that's what he's saying. So 50-1. I would love 50-1. I think this is definitely a live horse, maybe not necessarily to win, but definitely a horse that we can use underneath and Exactas and tries to kind of spruce up those tickets and get a little bit better of a price payout. But if you look at his last race, he kind of tossed that race out. He was wide throughout the race. He never really settled, and then he actually came home better than what it seemed on paper. Now I don't really have much bad to say about Michael Sanchez, the jockey that's ridden him 5 times in his career, but there's a little bit difference when Michael Sanchez is riding the horse and now we're getting Irad Ortiz. So Irad's a really good jockey with understanding the horse's running style, but he's also incredibly aggressive. So if he thinks the race is getting too slow up front, if he thinks the race is going too fast up front, he's either going to push the button earlier or he's going to wait a little bit longer and save a little bit more for his horse. And he's not scared to split a gap. So, it's not a 20-horse field. There's not 19 other rivals that he's going to have to deal with. But I think this horse is going to get at least an honest pace to run into. And like I said, first time Irad, he's going to be aggressive. I'm not necessarily sold that this horse can win the race, but like I said, really a horse that you can key in second and third to spruce up those tries and Exactas. Jump down to the 3, Catching Freedom. I talked about this horse a little bit when going over the Kentucky Derby. It didn't necessarily. Horses don't like to have dirt thrown in their face, and they don't like to split gaps. They like to kind of have a little bit more of clear running and be a little bit wider and don't get stopped. And we talked about this with Flavien, just kind of kept looking over his right shoulder, looking for a way out, and there was just no room to do it. Even if he could get out, he was going to have to swing 6, 7 wide and then maybe get in that fist fight with Sierra Leone and Forever Young. So he definitely took the right path and squeezed down on the rail and followed Mystic Dan and closed ground on Mystic Dan. And he was bumped when he went through that hole. So, we're looking at an 8-horse field now. There's only 7 other rivals. If you've heard me talk about Flavien before, he's one of my favorite jockeys. I think he gets horses to settle in the spots that they want to settle at, and he understands what they're going to do or what trip they need to kind of get their best running style, or at least their best foot forward. So I really like this horse. I don't think that he needs to be as far back with a shorter field. The quicker the pace up front, it will help him. But again, Flavian's one of those jockeys that understands and kind of has that mental clock and knows how quick they're going up front, and will nudge his horse a little bit to kind of stay in touch if they're going too slow. Skip over the 4 MUTH that scratched. The 5 Mystic Dan, I would say for more of the casual fans, this is definitely the horse that I would say most people are rooting for. I mean, this horse, if this horse can win on Saturday in the Preakness, we're going to see, at least a chance in 3 weeks in the Belmont for a Triple Crown. And, we're a little bit spoiled with justifying American Pharoah winning Triple Crown, but I think it was 37 years between when the last time a Triple Crown winner ran to when American Pharoah did it in 2015. So it's definitely something, it's a good story. And, I wouldn't be mad if this horse beats me, but I'm going to kind of play against this horse. I'm going to try and beat the morning line favorite. He had kind of the trip his own way. And, we keep talking about it and being that broken record of, having 19 rivals in the Kentucky Derby. You got to be able to work your trip. You got to be able to overcome kind of any obstacles that are put in front of you. And really the only obstacle that Mystic Dan had was, will the rail open and will I go through it? And he answered both of those with yes. He got the rail opening and he went through it and he ran away, but he didn't really run away. He looked like he ran away, but he just got the jump on everybody. He was saving ground, sitting at least 4 to 5, lengths wide going, into that home stretch based on Sierra Leone and Forever Young. And then he had basically a 3-length head start on Catching Freedom. And then if you watched, kind of how he finished in the stretch run, Catching Freedom, Sierra Leone, and Forever Young were all making up ground on him. So yes, it is a little bit of a shorter race, but I think that Mystic Dan does his best if he's able to put the field away kind of into the stretch or into that clubhouse turn while turning from home. He's not the kind of horse that's going to put horses away going in the stretch. So, other horses aren't going to have to overcome, what horses had to deal with in that Kentucky Derby while they have to only deal with 7 other rivals. Now, with that being said, we do see a little bit of rain in the forecast on Saturday. And if this track comes up a little bit wet, this is a horse that you definitely have to upgrade a little bit. He's proven over a muddy, sloppy track at Oaklawn in the Grade 3 Southwest, which was his best race to date. So this is a horse that if it comes up wet, you have to upgrade him and at least probably play him a little bit more on the defensive side. The 6 Seize the Gray. We talk about horses that ran in the Kentucky Derby. Seize the Gray did not run in the Kentucky Derby, but he ran on Kentucky Derby Day. He ran in the Grade 2 Pat Day Mile, and it proved to be a really good decision by D. Wayne Lucas. I wouldn't say he ran away from the field, but he won the race by a length and a quarter, and it was really kind of a geared down length and a quarter. The only kind of knock about this horse is earlier on in that day, the Churchill Downs main track was playing towards the speed, and he was up and near the lead. So I wouldn't necessarily, discredit what he did, but he did, Torres definitely put the horse in the best position forward based on how the track was running. He hasn't necessarily run a bad race on a wet track, but he hasn't necessarily. He had one that was rained off the turf at Saratoga and didn't really run a great race. Then he had broke his maiden on a sloppy track, but did it kind of going away, not necessarily going away, but having it kind of his own way, kind of like how Fierceness had the Florida Derby. So I'm not sold that a wet track is necessarily what this horse wants to do. Kind of more of a horse that I would play underneath. The 7 Just Steel at 15-1. This is an interesting horse. He can really just throw away his race in the Kentucky Derby. Keith Asmussen, the son of Steve Asmussen, is a young jockey. Doesn't really have any Kentucky Derby form, to kind of lean on. And but he got bumped early in the start, didn't really like what was happening, and he just rushed him up to the front. And they went way too fast, way too early. Keith Asmussen's not on the horse anymore. Joel Rosario takes over. And like I said, you could kind of just throw that race out. When you're bumped as hard as he was and rushed up into those fractions, really any horse is going to spit the bit out, and that's what he did. But what I think is interesting about this horse is he doesn't do much running in the stretch. It's kind of similar to Mystic Dan. He's not a horse that puts horses away in the stretch, but he has a really good kind of third panel racing style. What he wants to do is put pressure on the leaders kind of after that half mile and going into the turn. So what I like about this horse, and I'll allude to this kind of more in horses that I like, is I think this horse is going to ensure kind of an honest pace. He breaks quick, so he's not a horse that's necessarily going to be far back in the pack. So any horse that wants the leader going to have to break a little bit better and kind of outkick him to the first turn. So that's going to ensure an honest pace. And then if Joel, I think that Joel knows what this horse likes to do. And at some point, Joel's going to hit the button and say, okay, let's go. And so while we may not get very quick opening fractions, we may get a quick kind of third quarter of the race going into that turn. And so kind of setting it up for those closers. And one of those closers I really liked the 8 Tuscan Gold. What I really like about this horse, and we talked about it last year with Blazing Sevens, is Chad Brown, and I would say any trainer, is smarter than I am. But sometimes you just have to handicap the trainers. And Chad Brown had the 8 Tuscan Gold entered in the Peter Pan Stakes at Aqueduct last week. And at that time, didn't know if he was going to enter Sierra Leone in the Preakness or what he was going to do with Tuscan Gold. And instead of running Tuscan Gold in the Peter Pan, which is a much cheaper race as far as the purse goes, he decided to point Sierra Leone to the Belmont Stakes, skip the Peter Pan with Tuscan Gold, and point Tuscan Gold to the Preakness. Now, like I said, we've talked about this before with Blazing Sevens last year. When Chad Brown lays a horse off, skips a race, and points to the Preakness, it's just one of my favorite angles there is. He did it with Cloud Computing when he won the Preakness. He did it last year with Blazing Sevens, who ran a huge race behind National Treasure. And now he's doing it again with Tuscan Gold. I don't think we're going to get to 8-1, especially with the scratch of MUTH, but I love that angle. And if you look at what this horse has done, it kind of had more of I would say a schooling trip his first time out. Didn't do much running, but he did enough running to understand what was expected of him. And he came back at Gulfstream and ran away from the field. And ran away and won by 6 1/4 lengths and put up an 84 Beyer speed figure. I don't put a ton of weight into that, but that's a big speed figure for a maiden special weight race. He came back, ran a really good race in the Louisiana Derby, jumping up 11 speed figure points, which is a big jump in his third start of his career. And he ran third to who? Honor Marie, who ran a very respectable Kentucky Derby. And he ran behind Catching Freedom, who eventually won that race. Now, he's making his 4th start in his career. He's a young horse. And when horses make their 3rd, their 4th, their 5th start of their career, they generally take jumps up in form. And we saw it when he took his 2nd start in his career and jumped up 19 Beyer figures points. Talking all over myself. My mind is on another point and my mouth hasn't finished. And then he jumped up 11 Beyer speed figure points in his next race out in the Louisiana Derby. If he takes another step up, which he is definitely respectable enough to do with his form and his trainer, Chad Brown, and Tyler Gaffleone, that probably puts him in the winner's circle here. It definitely puts him in probably the best Beyer speed figure of this field. And so somebody else would have to make a big jump up to beat that. So that's definitely a horse that I like. And, without the scratch of MUTH, the 9 Imagination would be, as we call, the other Baffert, the higher price Baffert. But this is the horse that's going to ensure a pace up front. How quickly can he jump? How quickly can he clear the field? And we talked about it. Tuscan Gold is not a bad breaking horse. The 7 Just Steel also is going to be up front. The 6 sees the gray, can jump well. The 5 Mystic Dan is not a bad jumper. So, these horses, while they're not necessarily horses that need the lead, these are horses that are good breakers. And so Frankie Dettori and the 9 Imagination he's definitely going to have to use up a little bit of energy to get to the front. And then, like I said, what kind of pressure is Just Steel going to put on this horse? When is Tuscan Gold going to make his run? What's Mystic Dan going to do? I don't think that we're going to get, a walk the dog type fractions like National Treasure got last year. But this horse is definitely, for me, obviously Bob's got him in the race to win, but this horse to me is in the race to ensure at least a decent pace up front. And that's my 2 cents on the field, and I'll take a deep breath.
A deep breath is what you need there. Just visualizing what you're saying, I kind of had a feeling where you might be leaning before you broke down all 8 horses here. Going to let you catch a quick breath here before we ask you, obviously, the $1 million question. Who you got on top and what your exact box is, or how you're playing this race, I should say, Sean.
Yeah, I mean, if you just listen to the last, I don't know how many minutes of me rambling about 4-legged animals running in an oval, I don't think it's any surprise. My top pick is the 8 Tuscan Gold at 8-1. I don't think we're going to get anywhere near 8-1. It looks like DeRosa's fair odds are 4-1, and I don't even know if that's including the MUTH scratch. So we may be looking at 3-1, 4-1, 5. If we get 5-1, I'm going to be ecstatic. But again, it only matters if he wins, right? 5-1 doesn't matter if he runs a Forever Young and gets third. So that's my top pick up front. My second choice is the 3 Catching Freedom. Again, I love Flavian Pratt. I love the way that he rides his horses, gets them to settle into the position that him, the horse, and the owner. I'm sorry, not the owner. Owner has no say in it. Him, the horse, and the trainer have on where he wants to be, and kind of giving his horse the best shot. And I think he gets a better trip in a shorter field. And Ed DeRosa's fair odds are 5-1. So those are the 2 horses I like up top. I'm trying to beat Mystic Dan, but my big caveat on that is if the track comes up wet, and we'll know it when we see it. We're probably going to see rain throughout the day, but like we've talked about before, we're probably going to get a 10-hour break between the 12th race and the 13th race. So keep in mind, I'm looking back at the PPs. So we're looking at Eastern time. The Preakness is going off at 7:00. The race before that's going to be on the main track. Not the 2 races that are before that, but the race before that's going to be run on the dirt is 3 hours before that. So keep in mind, if it's not raining from 4:00 Eastern to 7:00 Eastern, that maintenance crew is going to be out there working on the track, opening it up, trying to get it to dry out. So keep in mind, you're going to have to use your eyes and understand, have we gotten rain during those surf races? What does the track look like? Have they opened it up? Is it still sealed? If it's sealed and if it's wet, you got to use Mystic Dan. You can't let Mystic Dan beat you. But if it's not sealed and if it's playing to kind of a more of a fair track, I'm going to try and beat Mystic Dan. He is my 3rd choice. So with that being said, my 4th choice, and I alluded to it earlier, is the 2 Uncle Heavy. I mean, if we can get 50-1, get this horse to run in 2nd or 3rd, it's not going to pay Kentucky Derby prices, but will definitely help out, especially if we can beat Mystic Dan. So my choices in order is going to be the 8 Tuscan Gold, the 3 Catching Freedom, the 5 Mystic Dan, and then in 4th, the 2 Uncle Heavy.
Now, for the non-horse player and they wanted to get a little cute and play some exacta or some exotics, any suggestions on what they might want to play?
Yeah, I mean, me, I always got to come with an exacta. That's I'd rather have my exacta than my top picks when I'm coming on with East Coast sports investors. I'm going to try and get a little cute, but again, got to use it with a little bit of a caveat. based on how the track is going to be playing on Saturday. So keep an eye out there. But I'm going to try and beat Mystic Dan up top. So my exacta for $1 is the 3 and the 8 up top, and then I'm gonna get wild underneath. We're gonna use Mystic Dan underneath, but we're gonna use a lot of prices. So it's the 3 and 8 on top, and over that it's gonna be the 2, the 3, the 5, the 7, the 8, and the 9. For $1, that's $10. But again, my caveat with that is if it's wet and if it looks like it's sealed wet track, use Mystic Dan on top as well. So it would turn into 3, 5, 8 over 2, 3, 5, 7, 8, 9. For $1, when we're trying to beat Mystic Dan up top, it's only $10. When we're using Mystic Dan defensively up top, it's only $15. So we're still going to get paid. We're still not paying too much, where if it wins, we're going to lose money. But if it's a wet track, we definitely want to be defensive up top with Mystic Dan.
So that second ticket that you said, if it's a wet track, the 358, basically with the field no one, correct?
Correct. Yeah, that one. If that one hits the board, I mean, I might as well just quit.
OMG, we know it's a busy week. We're gonna, you know what, Sean? After this, we're going to give you 3 weeks off. How's that? So we're going to catch you on 3 Thursdays from now to talk, obviously, the Belmont. They know they can go on to Twitter at Smooth Turn 2 or X, whatever we're calling it today. But the key here is you work for Wager Talk. You have a lot of great wealth and information. You have packages. Don't be shy here. This is when we close it out and tell everyone what you got to offer and where they can find it.
Yeah, I appreciate that. So it's it is over at wagertalk.com. I've already got my package loaded already. It is a pre-sale. I'm giving you guys $10 off if you buy it ahead of time. And then every time that I update the package, you will be emailed and notified to download the new version. So like I talked about with the weather, with the possibility of rain, I don't like to put out my picks too early and get people dead set on what's happening. I like to really understand what's happening in the track. So right now it's a pre-sale. Like I said, it's $10 off over at wagertalk.com. And each time that I update or put my picks in, you will be emailed and notified. And my final update will be probably around 2 hours before the first race at Pimlico when the scratches are announced. So if a scratch affects my picks, I'm definitely gonna go back to the drawing board and see how that affects my opinion, and not gonna leave you guys hanging on if scratches affect the races. We want to be up to date on what my opinion is for the race, what the pace is like for the race, who scratched, and try to cash the tickets as best we can.
Again, for people just tuning in, you can jump on over to YouTube at East Coast Sports Investors and subscribe. It's free there as well too. But to replay this back, the big caveat that I think everyone should take from here is use your eyes, guys. Keep an eye on that track. Sean trying to beat the Kentucky Derby winner here, Mystic Dan. But, and it's a big but, if the track is wet, don't be dumb. He told you, if it's wet, add him. And if you have any questions, go over to Twitter or X at Smooth Turn 2. Follow him. Ask him a question. He's one of the guys that actually will reply to your question with an answer. So don't be shy there. And as always, Sean, we can't thank you enough. You got places to go. Heading back to where I am right now, our backdrop here at the Circa. Make sure you tell Mr. Grissom we said hello, will you?
Yeah, I will. I just saw on Twitter it says that he's doing his show from Stadium Swim, so that should be fun to tune into and listen to a little bit of college baseball. But I definitely will give him your best, and looking forward to it.
I can't wait. I will have Matt Grissom live from the Circa on Friday at 2:30, talking some college baseball with the NCAA insiders. Quentin Mills, obviously, if he's there at the Circa. Mr. Alvarez, Mr. Grissom, get on over there, watch the races, say hello to Jeffrey Benson, Derek Stevens, get down to Circa Swim. Always a great time. Shout out to our producer, our star, Mr. Noah Frank. To everyone watching and listening, we can't thank you enough. Jeff Dawson at EC Sports Invest, and of course, Sean Alvarez at Geiger. Catch us at 4:30, the closing bell. We'll see you soon.